Survival Quest. It was a little movie. And the director had put us in it was called the Kern River. And we almost drowned. There were about 5 of us clinging to a big log, and all of us almost drowned. And I went to that night we were in a little motel up in the Sierra Mountains. And I went and got tubes of live crickets, about 5 of them. Big tubes of crickets, and the crickets were big. And when he went to bed that night, I poured a tube of crickets into his room through the window. And then he got up, I saw the lights go on, he got up, and I'm outside laughing because I knew there weren't that many rooms in this motel. And so he got moved to another room, and I hit him again. And for about 20 years, he didn't know who the cricket man was. But he had to sleep in that room with those crickets. As soon as he went to sleep, I hit him with another tube. But anyway, those are good practical jokes. You know.
Did you ever confess to him who did it?
Yeah, his name was, he had done, wait a minute, what was his name? My short-term memory is gone right now. It'll come to me. I'll interrupt something else and tell you his name.
So I'm sure we have a few Aliens fans here. What was your reaction when you first read that part of Bishop? What were your initial thoughts?
Jim Cameron writes great scripts. I mean, I'm not talking about what you saw. I'm talking about what the script contains when an actor gets it. The first line of that script was, space, like the love of God, cold and remote. And I went, whoa, this is like, there's going to be some serious stuff in this script. I mean, he's a great writer. He's also an artist. He does a lot of great drawings. But when I read the material, I thought, I didn't have the role yet. He made me audition, and I'd already done 2 movies with him. And the reason he did it was because in England, we shot it in England, the law was you have to see every person that's possible for that role as part of the deal of doing a movie there. So he had to audition me, and he did. And I got the role, but I was really scared at first because Rutger Hauer had done Blade Runner and done such a great android kind of character, and he did it with, you know, with Alien. In fact, I was almost going to be in Alien, and I'm glad I didn't get it. I was actually in India shooting Close Encounters. But anyway, when I was afraid of how am I going to compete with these great talents that have done these roles. And I realized you can't compete. You cannot start your job off competing out of fear, you know. And so I found how I was going to do the role, and that was to play myself at 12 years old, that innocence, that quality of forgiveness that he had, and that he felt so stunned by the beauty of a living thing that he was in awe of life. So it had a beautiful quality, and it was actable instead of acting an android. How do you act a toaster? You know what I mean? How can you do that? Like, there's a piece of toast. You know what I mean? Or Ian, I remember somebody told me a story about him that he had developed a twitch while he was doing Alien. And they actually, by the time it got to screen, he had cut all the twitches out. So you didn't notice he was twitching a lot. But it's interesting, you know, to approach a role, how do you do it? And I found that particular way. And I remember Jim asking me, he told me, I don't know how I'm going to introduce Bishop into the movie, but you remember that game we used to play when we were kids with a knife? And I said, oh yeah, I used to play it, you know, but I did it with a popsicle stick, not a knife. But knowing him, I remember distinctly that I had to go and buy as many kinds of knives as I could find. Switchblades and throwing knives and knives that open all different ways. And what ended up happening, and I practiced with all of them, and I got good with it. But when I got to England, it was doing the IRA stuff, and the guy opened my suitcase, and right on top was there was like 30 knives. The guy said to me, a little bit like being at the Canadian border, would you mind backing away from your suitcase, please? Anyway, you know, all authorities is pretty much the same. They wouldn't let me in the country, so Fox had to come down and get me out. They let me in, but it's a good thing I did it, because he picked the knife, one knife that I actually worked with a circus guy to learn how to take the knife and spin it in the palm of my hand and then grab the handle before it fell. So I was ready. Knowing Jim, I had to be ready. That's a long story. God, we're almost out of time.
So that innocence that you found in the character of Bishop, I mean, the scene where Ripley first realizes what you are, the look on your face, I cried. It was so sad, and I felt genuine, like, pity for you.
You made me the sweetest person.
What? Jane, I cried. Is that something that you brought to the role yourself, or is that like direction from James? Is it like a collaborative thing, or a vision that you really had for this character?
How many people in this audience have desires to be an actor? How many? There's quite a few. Quite a few. Yeah, I want to share something with you guys. Early in my career, I was doing movies with Sidney Lumet and different people that were really high-quality directors. But I knew how to work because I had studied, but there was a trigger that I never pulled, and that was that I was going to do it with what I know and really know how to do. And I would do a movie, but I would serve the film, and I would be on time and do it like I thought that the script wanted it and all of that, right? But I ended up being almost invisible on screen because I wasn't doing my humanity. I was serving the movie. Bad idea. And when Jim gave me the role, and this is to answer your question, when James gave me the role, he said, he kind of asked me what I'm using, and I wouldn't tell him everything because an actor needs secrets. You can't tell him everything, because then they'll decide on how they want to use it, rather than see what I do and then support me. Different, you know? And so the innocence that Bishop had, I carried all the way through the movie, and even in London I would get lost because I was playing a 12-year-old. I'd be sitting on a street corner in London and forget how to get back to the hotel. Really, literally. I mean, it was the craziest thing. But when she rejected me like that, the answer is, I was feeling that kid in me. And when she did it, I was like surprised and shocked. And he had whispered into her ear, he's a Nazi. And in my ear, he said, I want you to be a South African black kid, that if you make any mistakes, they're going to get rid of you. And that's what happened. That's how that scene happened. In fact, she snapped the cornbread out of my hand, and what you don't see was I was on all fours under the table, picking up the pieces. So that's how it works. I mean, there's a lot of what ifs, and can you live up to this, and all that kind of stuff. So it had a great innocence to it. And I didn't know if that was going to work, but I had to risk it. I risked those moments only because I didn't want to just serve the movie. My analogy is, have you ever seen a cat or a live animal, horse, or whatever it is, in a film, and your eye goes right to it? How is he feeling? What is he thinking? What is he doing? Is he scared? Oh, they scared him. Look at he's watching the camera guy. You can tell when a horse is watching the camera guy, right? You see it. The film picks up everything. And so I didn't want to get caught acting anyway. Oh, water.
You're doing most of the talking. What I find very interesting is your character of Ed Harley in Pumpkinhead also really does have quite a quality of innocence also, but the outcome quite different. Did you find any parallels between the two characters at all?
No. They're different. You know, Ed Harley having a son like that and no mother, a father. I don't know how many fathers are in here that are, you know, the single parent, but living in the Ozarks like this guy did, and he's got a son, and I remember I improvised this scene where I said to Stan Winston, who was directing it, we don't have much time for the audience to feel what he feels for his son. And I remember a scene where I had to wash his hands outside of the house in a big bucket. And I was telling him about his grandmother used to wash my hands like this. And she was like 80 and her skin was thin as tissue paper. I could feel the bones in her hands, but it was so nice. That almost makes me well up. It's fun.